Do you ever feel like you can never get your guitar playing as fast as you'd like it to be? Do you feel like you keep working on techniques and you keep not seeing the progress that you want? In today's video, I wanted to talk about 3 things that I find in my students often is holding them back and share it with you so that you can help speed up your own progress. So one of the first common issues I see with guitar players that are in the intermediate, maybe going into the advanced area, and they can't get their playing fast, is that we're actually working way too hard with our left hand. And what I mean by that is we're squeezing really hard. This is something that I had to work on unlearning when I was in university, because when I started playing the guitar, I was 9 years old and the guitar was about as big as me. So making actual notes come out was a real struggle. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate. And a lot of beginner guitar advice says that you need to, if you're learning bar chords, you need to press harder. That, I think, while it can be helpful in the initial stages, can also lead to bad habits that continue to affect us when we get to more advanced stages. So one exercise that I always get my students to do is to take something that you know really, really well. Like, say, the A minor pentatonic scale. I feel like we all know this one pretty well, but if you don't, I have a video on the minor pentatonics on my channel. One thing that I find my students do a lot is they exert way too much effort with their left hand. And this comes from when we're working on something and we're learning it for the first time. Sometimes we want to press hard and really feel like sturdy, like we've got it. And that's actually counterintuitive a lot of the time because we're exerting more force than we need to. So 1, our hands are tighter than they need to be and more tense. And 2, it's like if we were walking with weights in our shoes. It weighs us down to the frets if we're pushing into the fretboard really hard. So this really simple exercise I get my students to do is we play the A minor pentatonic scale. Then I say, okay, now do that with 30% less effort from your left hand. 30% less pressure. So they go. And then I go, okay, 30% less than that. 30% less than that. Most of the time you'll find that with really, really light pressure, we'll get to less than half that they used the first time. They're still getting clean notes. Because once you get good fret placement, which if you've never thought about finger placement on the frets, I always like to think it's as if you cut the fret in half. You want to be in the upper half of the fret. But if your hand is in a good position, you really don't need to exert a lot of force to get notes out of the strings. And when this happens, this frees up your left hand to play a lot cleaner and a lot faster. It might feel a little bit weird at first. It might kind of feel like you're totally ungrounded and it's like skating on a really slick ice rink. But this is one of the keys that I find really helps unlock things for players. One of my favorite guitarists, Julian Lage, once said that he thinks of his hands as choreography when he's playing the guitar. And I think that that's a really beautiful analogy because we want our left hand to be graceful and smooth like a ballerina rather than, clunking around like a heavy-footed tap dancer or something. I don't know. I'm not super into the world of dance for that analogy. But that's one thing that I find holds a lot of my students back is we carry a lot of tension in our left hand and we press too hard. And when we press too hard, it's like we're digging in to the fret that we're on, which makes it harder to get to the next one. So that's something that I'd really encourage you to mess around with is this idea. Oh, I threw in an exciting note there. Mess around with this idea of playing a little bit lighter with your left hand. Now, the second most common issue that I see with my students has to do with our right hand and with our picking. So, I happen to use these little Jazz 3 style picks, but whatever pick you use, the principles stay the same. And one of the biggest things I find holds people back is pick depth. And now what pick depth is if I hold my guitar up like this, pick depth is how low beneath the string your pick hangs. And ideally, with our right hand positioning, we don't want to be digging in a ton. Ideally, we're just kind of gliding over the string. Because again, kind of like when we squeeze too hard with our left hand, in our right hand, if we're picking too deeply, our right hand's getting kind of jostled around and it's really digging into things and getting hung up. So by lightening up with our right hand and getting this kind of thing, I tend to find that let's see if I can get this on camera, my wrist and my arm is at a slight outward angle from the guitar, and I find that this can really, really help get your pick depth under control. But however, it might be you need to hold your pick a little bit closer to the bass. But one thing that always holds back my students is this inconsistent pick depth or this pick depth that's just way too deep. Because a lot of us maybe started playing when we were kids, or we started playing and we didn't really know how to hold the pick. A lot of my students who come to me as beginners kind of hold the pick out like this, and it's really crazy. So I try to leave about 1.5 millimeters, 2 millimeters of pick hanging out. You can't even really see it with my lighting. There we go. And we want to just be kind of gliding across the top of the strings rather than digging into them, because the deeper we dig, the harder it is. And a really good exercise for this is I try when I'm picking, even if I'm doing an exercise slow, I just try to keep my pick so that it's just, and I don't really have a great way to show this on camera. I try to just kind of tip. Try to just keep the tip dancing off the top of the strings rather than digging in deep into them. The other thing with your right hand that I'll kind of throw on to this as a bonus is pick travel, which if pick depth is this way, how deep we are into the strings, pick travel is how far we go away when we are originally plucking the strings. So we want to keep our pick nice and close to the strings. We don't want to be playing with super wide strokes. So try when you're thinking about your right hand is keeping it close to the strings, not too deep this way, and close to the strings horizontally as well. We don't want to be playing, it's really hard to play fast if you play with really dramatic wide pick strokes. So yeah, there's some stuff to work on with your right hand. The third problem that I see with a lot of my students is they don't practice with a metronome. They know that they should, but they don't. And the thing with metronomes that's great, particularly when you're working on things with speed, is that it gives you gauged progress. It's like if you were going to the gym and you realize one week you can bench press 10 pounds more and then the next week 10 pounds more. It gives you a real way to gauge your progress. And the second thing that it does that's incredible is it actually lets you get instant feedback on whether you're playing in time or not. So a lot of times we might develop, if we're not working with a metronome, we might develop some kind of picking technique that's like stuttered almost. Our 8th notes or 16th notes aren't clean and level. They're kind of haphazard. And that makes it harder to clean things up than put them in time. So I know that playing along to a metronome can be a frustrating, confusing, and difficult process. I do have a video on my channel about not fearing the metronome and working with it, but I'll give you a quick example here of how you can start working with a metronome. So let me just pull up my metronome app here, which of course now that I'm filming I can't find. There we go. Okay, so say I'm working on my speed, and here I've got a metronome going at 200 beats per minute. This is a little bit quick. Obviously take it as slow as you need to, but here it's going at 200, and I'm going to try playing in 8th notes. So the thing that's wonderful about this is that every downstroke, if I'm playing 8th notes, that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Every single downstroke falls on a click, which can really help kind of keep you in line. And so say I'm working on something like my G major pentatonic scale. I'm working with a metronome and I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm trying to just lock in as tightly as I can with the metronome. And again, the thing that's wonderful about this is that when you're really playing in time with a metronome, it forces you to iron out the kinks and maybe unevenness in your picking and in your left hand. And it gives you real feedback on whether you're doing it in time, which is invaluable when you're trying to do these things. So there's my 3 tips as to why you can't play fast and why it's not going well for you. There's obviously a ton of variables on each student's individual case, but this is something that I see a lot across all of my students that come to me. So I really hope you found this video useful. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. It helps me out more than you could know. If you want to take a guitar lesson with me and maybe work on some of the things we covered here, or something completely different, I teach all genres and levels, I'd love to work with you. There's a link to that down in the description as well. And other than that, I have a new video coming out every Monday and Thursday, so I hope to see you in the next one. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you get to have some fun playing the guitar. Thank you for watching.